What's up, YouTube? Hope you're having a happy Thanksgiving if you're catching this the day of release. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving if you're catching it later. We are throwing up some pure violence in this league. So I don't know if you have watched the stream recently, but I've played against more scam than I could possibly imagine. And after getting turn one scammed out of every deck imaginable, about as many times as you possibly can, I kind of thought to myself, what if I could fight back? What if I could be the scammer? What if I could grief them? What if I'm on the draw and they scam and I could subtlety them or something? So I decided to go that route today. I decided to go all in on blue-black scam. There were some flex spots in here before. It was a list that we got sent months ago that we played through like one league, had Murktides and stuff. We tossed those out the window and said, no, we're street wraithing up the consistency. We're Death Shadows, our backup plan, and we're just going grief subtlety. So some of the cool things about the list that like red, black scam doesn't have access to. We don't have Fury clearly. But what we do have is a scammed subtlety or a scammed grief on turn one, turning on stubborn denial. Also, like either one of those scammed on turn one opens up counterspell on turn two is a really huge tempo play. We've got, like I said, Death Shadows, our backup plan. Trying out a couple copies of the Ancient One, blue-black 2-drop from the new Ixalan set. It's an 8/8 with Descend 8, can't attack or block unless there are 8 or more permanents in your graveyard. Then you can pay 2, a blue and a black, draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a card, you mill cards equal to that card's CMC. So a 2-drop, 8/8, obviously pretty big drawback with the needing 8 permanents. But between Street Wraith, our scam threats, Shadow, Fetch Lands, Dress Down, we're going to see if we got enough to get it online. For our interaction, we've got a couple copies of Fatal Push, Dismember, some Drown in the Locks, obviously our counter magic. The original list had Dolphy and Murktide. Like I said, we cut those for Drown in the Locks and Street Wraiths. In the sideboard, a couple Spreading Seas, third copy of Dress Down, some Stern Scoldings, which has been really overperforming for me out of a lot of other blue-based Shadow variants. Flusterstorm, 2 Bowmasters, a Fatal Push, 1 Chalice to the Void, 2 EE, an Unlicensed Hearse, and a couple Nihil Spellbomb. Really trying to get in on the mirror match post board, or the mirror match, the inferior mirror match, by being able to Spellbomb and Hearse and Fatal Push, stuff like that, and Stern Scolding. So let's go ahead and hop in, show off some of these games. Maybe Dimir Scam Shadows a deck you want to try out. Obviously, the Ancient One being like the big question mark in the list. No idea how that's going to perform. I mean, I know now, but I didn't know then. So, got to show you guys how. So, on the play, no grief, no undying effect, but we do just have like Thought Seizes and stubs. One of my favorite plays in Modern is passing with the soft stub up. Sometimes you get to hit stuff. If our opponent did have like a grief and a scam, we did have Stubborn Denial and Dismember to potentially answer it, so we weren't dead to that. If they had a turn 1 creature, we had Dismember. If they had something like Expedition Map or Amulet of Vigor or something, then that soft stub's really, really nice there. And then if they have a second copy, you can untap and Thoughtseize it. But it looks like they're on the inferior undying plan. They've got Terminate and Fury. We got Stubborn Denial. Opponent does find a Dolphy here, but we have the Dismember for that, so we know we're going to be able to kill this Dolphy, untap, take something, probably take the Terminate, because they are a couple lands off of the Fury. So if we can like take the Terminate and have a couple draws to find an answer to the Fury, like Subtlety, then that's a pretty cool trade-off for us. So take that Terminate, leave them with the Fury. If they want to evoke the Fury and lose their last card, that's fine. We still get Subtlety. You're going to dash a Ragavan. Yeah, dash a Ragavan. We say cool because you know what we know that you don't know. our deck has no good cards. So hit us with your best shot. But they do find the land, hard cast the Fury, which Subtlety is such a sweet answer to here. Because if they do put the Fury back on top to maybe evoke it next turn, then we've got Counterspell. They choose to bottom the Fury, so we know their last card is that dashed Ragavan. And they can't draw both a red source and a terminate. So we get the attack in, hold up Counterspell, and we should be clear to go on this game. Ragavan doesn't block Grief or Subtlety, so nice. Nice. Up a game already. Okay, so sideboarding. I had no idea what I wanted to do with this deck. I know typically in these evoke mirrors or these scam mirrors, you'll see people board heavily out of the scam package because you're expecting like a bunch of grave hate out of your opponent. So I kind of went that route and just boarded out a bunch of these like Not Dead After Alls and Undying Evils. Whether that's right or not, I have no idea. But I brought in Stern Scoldings, Fatal Push, Dress Down, the Nihil Spell Bombs on the draw. Didn't bring in the Unlicensed Hearse. Thought it was a little bit slow. What else? Something Dark Side. Decided to keep a one-lander, but it's a one-lander that I can scam off a Grief if I need to. I've got a Nihil Spellbomb. Unfortunately, our opponent does have scammed Grief on the play. We do not have a Subtlety. Really don't want to mulligan very aggressively in these mirrors because at the end of the day, it all does come down to like who's got cards available. But they do take our Grief and our Bowmaster. So we're just hoping to find like fetch lands. And just to give an idea on the Ancient one, we've got 3 permanents, now 4 permanents in the graveyard. If we found another fetch land, it would be 5. Then potentially Drown or Dress Down could be 6, or Dress Down actually just getting your Ancient one online. But since we missed the land, we decided to scoop it up, go to game 3. Game 3, I made the mistake of bringing a couple Not Dead After Alls back in, and then am immediately punished by my opponent having Leyline. Thankfully, I don't have any of these Not Dead After Alls in my opening hand, but you know, if you bring something in because you think something's not going to happen, it's going to happen, and you're going to find the thing, right? Like, that's kind of how magic works. So right on cue. Right on cue. Would have been really nice to be able to scam that Grief here, but obviously Leyline doesn't let you do that. This was also the point of the league where I decided I probably needed a copy of Otawara in the main deck. Would be a pretty good answer to things like Leyline. But, you know, you live, you learn. Opponent's got a Bone Crusher, 2 Undying Effects, and Unknown. We're just going to throw out our Bowmaster because that's like pretty good into 1-for-1 interaction. Got these 2 hardcast Griefs, so if we find our 4th land, like being able to hardcast Griefs is pretty solid as well. Being able to hardcast Grief and hold up a Not Dead After All, not quite as good, but you know. We'll go ahead and fire off one of them. Opponent rewards us with a Fury. I don't know why they didn't cast that last turn, unless they were just afraid of Counterspell, but either way, we'll take it. Might as well get some use out of these Not Dead After Alls, and Grief Fodder is going to be possible use. So I decided to hold on to the other Grief and the other Not Dead because I can use them to enable Revolt for Fatal Push. Like, I don't have a lot of good ways of dealing with this Bone Crusher, but that's one of them. Then, little rewarded here, because opponent does hit us for 4, but then they go for a hard cast Grief. We get the Stern Scolding, which means they only have 1 Undying Effect up. If I can find an answer, which we do. So now we get to Grief, make sure the coast is clear. Yeah, coast is clear. They're just stuck on their undying effects. Go for the fatal push, bone crusher trigger, the undying evil. We drown in the lock. We don't want to target the bone crusher again to take 2 more damage. You just want to counter the undying evil. So now I know their last card in hand is a not dead after all, and I'm just hoping that they can whiff for a turn or 2, and I can find like a 4th land for subtlety. Drown in the Lock's pretty good too. Drown in the Lock being like a hard counter spell here is really nice. Takenumas, they get back Grief. Thankfully, we don't really care too much about that with our Stern Scolding. And I do really feel like if I can just find the 4th land here, that I could get this subtlety on a nice tempo play and like close the game out with my flyer. Because right now, still know that their last card is this not dead after all, and an unknown, but mostly just the not dead after all. No play from opponent. I'm going to fire off this dress down. They could have Bowmaster, and I get punished for tapping off of Drown in the Lock, but I'm playing the odds here. I need cards. I need stuff to do. We find 3rd not dead after all. I did leave the Undying Evils in the board, and I think I only have the 3 not dead after alls in the main, or that I brought back in. So it was a little unfortunate seeing all 3 of those. If I didn't want to counter, I could have gone for subtlety there, untap, Drown in the Lock to kill the token and swing in for lethal. But like, I really wanted this subtlety to be saved for like a Bowmaster. Probably greedy because they just ripped back-to-back fables. But again, if we've got the subtlety and we get backed into a corner, we can just go for it, which is what we're doing here. But I was really hoping to like hit one of their guaranteed top decks. Like, oh, they tap out for a Fury and I subtlety it and the game's over. Grief, whatever. Something that they would have played, so I knew they weren't just sandbagging something. Either way, on to game 2, or match 2, which we start off with immediately getting Grief scammed. Turn 1 Grief scam count is 2. Our hand with no Grief and no scam. A little less exciting. So, hope y'all are having a great week. We'll just be over here twiddling our thumbs, waiting to die to this Grief. Sure wish we had a couple shadows. Our hand would have been really good if they didn't have something on turn 1, like this Grief. Because we would have had just Counterspell on 2, or Stub on 1, double Shadow on 3, backed up by Stub or something. And yeah, just kind of threw a wrench in our plans. So they end up scamming another Grief here. And I scoop it up to that because they can attack in for 4, put me down to 2. I can't kill them on the crackback. They have 2 lethal attackers. Even if I like dress down or something, it's not lethal. So end up scooping up there. So the scam us count, us getting scammed, is up to 3. Then bring in the unlicensed hearse. Like I said, on the play, I do think it's a little bit slow on the draw, but on the play, it's a pretty cool inclusion. As soon as I bring up their hand, we'll see that we thought seized, left them with like some undying effects, nothing too crazy. So I left them with a Dolthy. They ended up finding a second Dolthy, which, spoiler alert, ends up being like this entire game. Because we're not very well equipped to deal with things that are on the battlefield. we're equipped with dealing with things before they get to the battlefield. Unfortunately, our hand did not agree this game. So, like, we end up finding the counter spell and the subtlety, and like, hey, we can answer stuff that's already in the hand. Cannot answer this Dolthy. So we actually just end up dying in like 5 hits to the Dolthy because we can't do anything about it. Rough, but them's the beats. On to match number 3. Back-to-back scam to start off the league. Really good hand here. Really good shadow hand. Opponent's on a turn 1 Stalactite Stalker. We Thoughtseize and see that they're on like, I'm guessing mono black Coffers. Because we see the Field of Ruin or just like mono black mid-range of some sort. Get to bait out a Defile into a Street Wraith here, which, oh, that felt good. Opponent could have just gone to their turn and like Field of Ruined us and then Defiled. But they got greedy, went for the end of turn. We had the Street Wraith. Unfortunately, they untapped with a Go for the Throat, but you can't live in the past. Fatal Push in. Getting the 6 damage through is really important because when we drown in the lock this Shieldred, we get to untap with a Dress Down that's exactly lethal. Opponent scooped to that, not knowing the Dress Down, but maybe they assumed it was there. Sideboard against mono black mid-range. I kind of thought Coffers a little bit, so I boarded out some of the stuff that was grave reliant, like Ancient One. Then our opponent starts on a scam. 4 times. 4 times grief scammed this league so far. 4 times in 3 matches. We haven't gotten to do it once. You know how bad that feels? Like, we've got 4 griefs, 4 or 6 undying effects, 4 not dead after all, 2 undying evils, plus Street Wraith, and we can't find a turn 1 scam grief. Feel gypped. Now, I could mulligan aggressively for it. I've seen some of the numbers run. This was literally just a grief for information. I can't beat their grief, so I'm just going to grief them to try to find out if they did something funky post-board that I want to know about. Looks like it's just removal spells and undying effects and some dudes. But, yeah, somebody ran the numbers on turn 1 scam, and it's like 16% to have a turn 1 scammed grief. Obviously, when you play against it, you know it feels a heck of a lot higher than that. But if you mulligan aggressively for it, you can mull down to 4 and up your chances to like 40-something%. But honestly, when have you ever seen a scam player mull aggressively down to 4? Because I haven't. So we got Stern Scolding for an end of turn Bowmasters. Pass the turn with Counterspell up. Don't want to crack my fetches yet. Double Stalactite Stalker. Decide to counterspell the second one because I can just like Fatal Push the first. But I might as well use some number of these counter spells, and I don't have anything else going on. Thoughtseize, we see Shieldred, Double Grief, and a Defile. Which we do get to take away the Double Grief, or they Double Grief. We get to take away the Stalactite Stalker, the Shieldred. They are left with the Defile that we know about. But again, Bowmaster, pretty decent to like 1-for-1 interaction. And Drown and Lock is like a hard counter spell here for a potential second Shieldred, or hard cast Grief is nice. But we'll just keep chugging away as long as the opponent will let us. They seem to not want to use Defile on a Bowmaster, and they know about Not Dead after all, so Bowmaster, my Bowmaster. We drown their Bowmaster. They defile again. So I guess they were just waiting for a second answer to Bowmaster so they could defile and then fight through the Undying effect. I decided to go ahead and fire off this Spell Bomb now while my opponent can't play a Bowmaster in response and get an extra ping. We'll double Field of Ruin. So we are down to the Watery Grave in hand, the Swamp, the Island, all of our fetchables out on the table. Decide I'm going to save this Watery Grave just in case. And top deck Shadow is about the best thing I could ask for. So shock in so I can make sure my Shadow outgrows Defile. And opponent scoops it up. On to match number 4. 4. Another non-scam hand. Subtlety gets Thought Seized. So I do want to point out that this is 4 straight black Thought Seize matches, 2 scam. Well, the third one was kind of scam. So scam, mono black, mid-range, or I guess I should say mono black Undying. And then this is another like Demolition Field, Field of Ruin, Thought Seize matchup. Let me go for the dress down here again, just to try to find land drops. Lay out the Shadow. I can cycle Street Wraith freely. If they decide to not do anything, then I would just like hold up, pass. But they decide they want to try to kill my Shadow. I say that's kind of rude. And we do just have a 2-turn clock if they don't have an answer to the Shadow. That's pretty sweet. Think Shadow's going to get there? I think if my opponent's Field of Ruining me, it will. There's not really that many things they can have to actually kill the Shadow. They could have Bowmaster to stand in the way, but pretty much anything I'm counterspelling if it interacts with the board at all or puts Bowmaster tokens out. So this looks, I'd say, more like mono black Coffers. Again, my sideboarding was all over the place, so I don't even want to talk about it that much because I don't know. I thought the third one was Coffers, and it looks like it wasn't. It was just like mono black scam. And then this one, I saw like a similar opening to the second matchup or the third matchup. So I was like, oh, is this another mono black scam? Is this red black scam? Is this what? And this looks like Coffers, mainly because they have Coffers in hand. But I also get to see this new card, Sunken Citadel, that I hadn't seen before. So it says when it enters the battlefield, choose a color. They chose black. You can tap for one of the chosen colors, or you can pay 1, tap it, or no. What is it? It's like tap it and the cost of another land is reduced by 2. So they're using it to reduce the cost of their Cabal Coffers, but it not being a swamp means their Coffers is making less mana, but the cost is reduced, and I don't know. Sometimes it's better to just not question it. But at the moment, I know my opponent's got 2 March of Wretched Sorrows, and they're top decking Karns, which we are not going to let them resolve. And we're just going to hope to hit them in the face with a Shadow 3 times. 2 times. Opponent's got these 2 marches. If they go for a big march, we've got Flusterstorm. And turns out that's all we need. We also could have Not Dead After All, our Shadow, if we wanted it to survive that way. So we had options. Opponent didn't like our options. They scooped it up. We go to game 2. 2? I believe 2. All of these mono black games are running together. Yeah, this is match number 5. That was game 2. This is match 5. So many matches to keep up with. So we Thought Seize. I I think I forgot to put their hand up this turn, so let's back up a little bit. Yeah, Thoughtseize, see Night's Whisper, March of Wretched Sorrow, and just 5 lands. So we're going to take the Night's Whisper, hope that we can, like, maybe find a scam for the Grief to take the March of Wretched Sorrow. Because I am convinced that I'm, at some point, going to get to scam one of these Griefs this league. Hadn't happened yet, which is, again, crazy because I'm running the same number of Griefs and Undying effects as, like, red-black. But Variance has decided. Pshaw. Alright, we're getting Field of Ruin. Slightly annoying, but what you gonna do? Really good time for one of them there. Undying effects. Nope. Okay. Never mind. Never mind. On to game 2. Against Coffers, I have a little bit more of an idea about how I want to sideboard when I know that it's Coffers game 1. Like I brought in... Okay. I kept this hand solely on the fact that it had turn 1 Scam Grief. Plus the opening hand was pretty mopey. Like, go back. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Opening 7, pretty mopey. Just Thoughtseize into Counterspell with no threats. So we mold to Scam Grief. Against the mono black Coffers deck, I want to have like the Spreading Season. I want to bring in Flusterstorm. I don't really want to bring in Stern Scolding. It does answer Bowmaster, but it doesn't answer Shieldred or like anything else in the deck. So, yeah. Either way, we're celebrating with turn 1 Scam Grief. And let's break out their hands so we can see what we take. And yeah. Okay. So they got Dolthy, Fatal Push, Karn, Shieldred's Edict, One Ring. I'm pretty on board with just taking Fatal Push, Shieldred's Edict, the 2 things that can actually answer the Grief. That way they have to hit lands and removal spells. And maybe there's a chance that they don't hit both of those things in a timely manner. If they do get to Dolthy, that's kind of okay. Like, I'm out racing the Dolthy at the moment. And if I am able to get up to the 4th land, then Hardcast Subtlety can maybe shut off, like, Shieldred or Arn for a turn. Counterspell, also just like a really nice pickup. They want to counterspell my, or blow up my land, that's fine. And then this is what I wanted to do with this deck, is have Stubborn Denial and Counterspell active off a turn 1 Grief. And that's all I cared about. That's it. It's very low hopes and dreams. And we're going to let the Dolthy resolve because we don't care about that. I know they're dead in 2 turns to Grief. I know they've got a Shieldred and a One Ring. And I think it might be like Shieldred, One Ring, Karn. But can't remember. Either way, I'm counterspelling whatever I can possibly counterspell here that stops me from killing them. And we take it home. Oh, the crowd goes wild. And we get to go to game 3. Kind of forgot about game 3 there. A little bit of a slower hand. If we top deck, I was going to say if we top deck an Undying effect, then we could Grief. But unfortunately, we just have to go this slow, hard cast stuff route. Night's Whisper is pretty decent on their side, I guess. Street Wraith Double Shadow is pretty decent on our side. I did think about just playing out the Double Shadow there. I don't think I hate that line. Just playing out the Double Shadow last turn. But I really didn't want my Shadow getting like Bowmastered if I didn't need to have it Bowmastered. Instead, we can just play out a Shadow, hold up Counterspell, or Drown, because now they're at 4 cards in the yard, so we could hit pretty much anything we care about with Drown. But it looks like our opponent is all in on these Field of Ruins, which is fine, because like we get to keep our board presence up a bit. Play out Shadow. I probably should have played Shadow off the Watery Grave, so if they had another Field of Ruin effect, they couldn't hit the Watery Grave. Or if they did hit the Watery Grave, I'd still have Drown in the lockup. But opponent decides they want to go play these trolls, and I don't want to get trolled. Okay, really cool series of lines here. So my opponent plays out Shieldred. I could counterspell. I could also attack into the Shieldred, because like I'll draw on my turn, I'll lose 2 life, and I force the chump block with the Shieldred. So if I find a fetch land, doesn't do it. So it'd have to be another Street Wraith kills, a Thoughtseize kills. Another blue card lets me evoke Subtlety and hold up Counterspell. So evoke Subtlety goes to the yard, triggers Revolt, lets me Fatal Push and hold up Counterspell. So I decide like I don't need to counter the Shieldred. I've got plenty of outs to it. Plus, like I said, they're on a forced chump block here, so I'm not terrified of the Shieldred. And I get really rewarded because my opponent goes for Karn, so now I can evoke the Subtlety on the Karn and untap, or a Fatal Push into turn, untap and present lethal. I do have to Fatal Push into turn, so if they have a Fatal Push, I'm not actually killing them. But they let us draw. We find Counterspell, so we had the win there if they had waited on the Fatal Push. Okay, so we ended up 4-1 that league. Such a weird matchup spread. We saw red-black scam twice. We saw mono-black scam, mono-black coffers, mono-black coffers again. Just one of those, the second half of that league, really rewarding Counterspell. The first half rewarding Interaction, which is not the strong suit of the deck. I think we really got lucky in the first round, and then the second round kind of like showcased our weakness to Scam. If you're looking for changes in the deck, some of the things that I would look at is I would cut Drown in the Lock and the Ancient One. I know there's just never a time that like I wanted to play out an Ancient One over something else. I wish it was better. I still think it can be okay in like a dedicated Ancient One shell, but you need Mishra's Bauble along with Street Wraith and Dress Down. But for this list, I would cut Drown, cut Ancient One, maybe consider cutting the Street Wraith as much as it pains me. So that opens up like 9 slots. I'd add 4 Dauthi, a 19th, maybe a 20th land. So that's 5-ish of those 9 slots. And then those extra 4, I'd go for like a second Dismember, a third Fatal Push, maybe a couple Preordain, or just like a playset of Preordain or something to try to set up the consistency for the grief. But I was kind of trying to get cocky there and say, oh, well, the Scam decks don't play setup cards, and they always have the grief on turn 1. So I do think if you're one of those people that is a better Scam player than me and has the Scam grief on turn 1 more consistently, then I think this could be a really cool option for you. Because, hey, you get to follow up your Scam grief with Counterspell. And that's pretty dope. So just think about that if you consider the deck. You could also run Bowmasters back into the main over some of those slots. So maybe those 4 Wraith, 3 Drown, 2 Ancient One become like 4 Dauthi, 4 Bowmaster, and a 19th land or something. So there's some ideas for you to think about. Hopefully you give it a shot and hopefully it performs. I say better than it did for me. It's still a 4-1. Like, that's still pretty cool. Sideboarding. It's tough to say when all you play against is scam. Maybe I'd move some of these drowns to the sideboard just for a little extra interaction. The Stern Scoldings I still think are great. Spreading Seas, great in the matchups that you want it for. Maybe it's less necessary with the Scam Grief package, but... I wanted to add an Otawara. So if you add a 19th land, make sure it's an Otawara. And then what else? The other thing was sideboard. If you're not running Drown, maybe Leyline of the Void over like the 2 Nihil spell bombs and the unlicensors. Because unfortunately, I think we're in a world where if you're on the draw against Scam, like your 1 mana grave interaction just being too slow is so relevant when you're going to see that matchup a lot. So consider Leyline of Void. A lot of talking. So again, hope you're having an awesome Thanksgiving, or if it's already happened, hope you had an awesome Thanksgiving. As always, I'll have links down below for the YouTube, or you're on YouTube, for the Twitch channel, the Twitter in case you want to know when the live stream's going live, the Discord if you want to come join the CntrlFreak Discord, and the deck list. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe, enjoy some good food and company. I'll catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.